Hi everyone, it's Miss Madeleine. Welcome to a math class. We are going to work on lesson number 4, measuring area. What is area? Area is the number of square units needed to cover a figure without overlapping. Sometimes you need to count the number of half square units covered by the figure. Now, as you can see in your book, you have these squares divided into half. Remember that half means mitad. Now, each of these parts, the colored part, is called 1/2 of a square unit. If you have two of these, two halves, you will have 1 square unit. Now, let me explain. In our class, Haley drew the figure at the right on the grid. What is the area of the figure Haley drew? Now, first thing that you have to do is count the number of whole squares. Whole squares are these ones. This is 1 whole square. Now, let's count how many whole squares does the figure has. Let me put it in another color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, and 15. So this figure has 15 whole squares. Why do we do not count these ones? These ones are not whole ones. Can you see that it's just a half of 1 square unit? So what do? You count the number of half squares. There are 2, and if you have 2 half squares, you make 1 whole. Okay? Now, we have, 14 was the correct answer. 14 whole squares and 2 half squares. Remember that 2 halves make 1 whole. So 14 plus 1 is 15 whole squares. So the area is 15 square units. Next page. Now, we're going to do example number 2. Sometimes the units of drawings or figures represent another unit of measurement. Now, Raphael created the geoboard figure at the right to represent a design he created. 1 square unit on the geoboard represents square centimeter on the design. What is the area of the design? So you have to follow steps to count to find the area of this design. The first thing that you're going to do is count the whole squares, okay? Let's do this. Let's count. This is 1 whole square. So we are going to count how many of these do we have. We have 1, 2, here we have 2. We have 3, 4, 5. Remember that first we have to count the whole squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. This is the number of whole squares, 8. Now we're going to count how many square halves do we have. Let me do it in another color. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 half squares. I will explain it to you guys like this. 8 half squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And remember that if we have 2 half squares, we make 1 whole square. So let's see how many holes squares do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, and 4 half squares. Okay, there are 8 half squares, and 8 half squares make 4 whole squares. This part is the same as this part that I just explained. So let's add. How many is 8 plus 4? It's 12 whole squares. So the area is 12 square units or 12 square centimeters. Okay, let's do number 1. We're going to do this slow so you can understand. Find the area of each figure. Remember, the first step is to count the whole squares, okay? 1, 2, and 3. We have 3 whole squares. Plus, how many halves do we have? Let's see. We have 1, 2, and 3. Now, remember that 2 halves make 1 whole square. So we have 3 plus 1 is 4, but we have 1 half left. So the area of this figure is 4.5 square units, okay? Now, let's count the area of number 2. Remember that the first step is to count the whole squares, and then we're going to add the half square. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have 4 whole squares. And how many halves do we have? 1 and 2. And remember, if you have 2 halves, you make 1 whole. Si usted tiene 2 mitades, hace 1 entero. So we are going to add 4 plus 1 is 5. So the area is 5 square units. Next page. Find the area of each figure. So what is the first step? We have to count the whole squares in the figure. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have 4 whole squares. Tenemos 4 enteros. After we count the whole squares, we need to count the halves, los que están a la mitad. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we are going to add plus. Remember that 2 halves make 1 whole square. Here we have 1. So we have 4 plus 2 equals 6. Now, let's do number 4. The first step is to count the whole squares. We have 1, 2 whole squares plus, how many halves do we have? ¿Cuántas mitades tenemos? 1 and 2. And remember that 2 halves make 1 whole. 2 mitades me hacen un entero. So 2 plus 1 is 3. Now, number 5. First, we need to count the whole ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? We have 6 wholes, enteros. Now, let's see how many halves do we have. Here I have 1 and 2. Remember that 2 halves make 1, okay? Now we have 1 and 2, and remember that 2 halves makes another whole. So we are going to add 6 plus 2 equals 8. Now, next figure, number 6. First, we need to count the whole squares. The first step, contamos los cuadritos que están enteros. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have 4 wholes. Now, let's see how many halves do we have. I have 1 and 2. this makes 1, so plus 1. I have another 2 halves that makes another whole. I have another 2 halves that makes another whole, and I have another 2 halves that makes another whole. Tengo dos mitades, me hacen un entero. Aquí tengo 1, 2, 3, 4 enteros. What is my area? 8. Why? Because 4 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 8. Find the area of each shaded region in 1 square if 1 square unit represents 1 square inch. Now, the first thing is to count the holes. Vamos a contar los enteros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. The answer is 12 square inches. Now, let's look at number 8. The first step is to count the holes. Ese es el primer paso, contar los enteros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Tenemos 9 holes. Now we need to count the halves. 1, 2, and 3. Remember, if we have 2 halves, that makes 1 whole. So we have 9 plus 1 is 10, but we have 1 half left. So the area of this square, the area of this square unit is 10 and 1 half. Now, number 10, the area is 10 square units, and we are going to see why. The first step is to count we need to count the whole ones. Okay, 1, 2, first we're going to count los enteros. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We have 8 holes. Now we're going to see how many halves. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Remember that 2 halves makes 1, so my answer is 10 square inches. Now let's see this one. First we need to count the holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. On this shape we do not have halves, okay, so it's easier. Next page, we do not do it, so please open up your book on my homework. Now, find the area of each figure. The answer for number 1 is 14, and let me explain you why. The first step is to count the whole ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Tenemos 12 enteros. Now we're going to see how many halves. 1, 2, that makes 1. 1, 2, that makes 1. So the answer is 14. 12 plus 1 plus 1 is 14. Now, next one, number 2. First, we count the whole ones. The answer is 7, as you can see. But let me explain you why. The first step is to count the whole. Los enteros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Plus, how many halves do we have? 1 and 2. And that makes 1. When I say how many halves, significa que es la mitad del cuadrito de un entero. And if we have 2 halves, that makes 1. So the answer is 7 square units. Number 3, you first count the whole ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. As you can see, the answer is 8. Now let's count these ones. First, we need to count the whole ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. The answer is 12. What is the area of Elaine's bedroom in square units? The answer is 50. You're going to do the same thing. First, you need to count the whole ones, the whole squares, and then you need to add the house. These are the house. This answer is 50. Number 6. Look for a pattern. If each square unit represents 5 square feet, what is the area of Elaine's bedroom in square feet? Use repeated addition. We add 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15 is 75. And number 7, describe area in your own words. You write the definition for area. And number 7, what is the area of the figure in the right? Remember, you need to count the whole ones first. And the answer is 13 square units. Okay, that is it for today.